Those who improve humanity. 1. My demand on philosophers is well known, that they place themselves beyond good and evil, that they put the illusion of moral judgment beneath them. This demand follows from an insight which was formulated for the first time by me, that there are no moral facts at all. Moral judgments have this in common with religious ones. They believe in realities that are unreal. Morality is just an interpretation of certain phenomena, or speaking more precisely, a misinterpretation. Moral judgments, like religious ones, belong to a level of ignorance at which the very concept of the real, the distinction between real and imaginary, is still absent. So that truth, at this level, refers to all sorts of things which today we call fantasies. Thus, moral judgments can never be taken literally. Literally, they always contain nothing but nonsense. But they are semiotically invaluable all the same. They reveal, at least to those who are in the know, the most valuable realities of cultures and inner states that did not know enough to understand themselves. Morality is just a sign language, just a symptomatology. You already have to know what it's all about in order to get any use out of it. 2. A first, completely provisional example. People have always wanted to improve human beings. This, above all, was called morality. But hidden under this same word is a completely different tendency. Both the taming of the human beast and the breeding of a particular human species have been called improvement. Only this zoological terminology can express the realities. Naturally, realities of which the typical improver, the priest, knows nothing and wants to know nothing. To call the taming of an animal its improvement sounds almost like a joke to our ears. Anyone who knows what happens in menageries has doubts about whether any beast gets improved there. The beast gets weakened, it is made less dangerous, and through the depressing feeling of fear, through pain, through wounds and hunger, it becomes a sickly beast. It is no different with the tamed human being whom the priest has improved. In the early Middle Ages, when the church was in fact a menagerie first and foremost, the most beautiful exemplars of the blonde beast were hunted down everywhere. For example, the noble Teutons were improved. But what did such a improved Teuton look like? Once he had been lured into the cloister. Like a caricature of a human being, like an abortion. He had become a sinner. He was stuck in a cage, imprisoned among all kinds of awful concepts. There he lay now, sick, wretched, with ill will towards himself, full of hate against the impulses to live, full of distrust for everything that was still strong and happy. In short, a Christian. In physiological terms, in a struggle with the beast, making it sick can be the only means of making it weak. The church understood that. It corrupted human beings, it weakened them, but it claimed to have improved them. 3. Let's turn to the other case of so-called morality, the case of the breeding of a particular race and type. The most magnificent example is provided by Indian morality, which in the form of the law of Manu was sanctioned as religion. This law sets the task of breeding no fewer than 4 races at once: a priestly race, a fighting race, a race of merchants and farmers, and finally a race of servants, the Shudras. Obviously, we are no longer among animal tamers here. A type of human being 100 times more gentle and reasonable is the prerequisite for even conceiving of such a breeding plan. We let out a sigh of relief as we step from the Christian air of sickness and dungeons into this healthier, higher, broader world. How pathetic the New Testament is in comparison to Manu. How bad it smells. But this organization too needed to be frightening, not in struggle with a beast this time, but with its own antithesis, with the non-bred human being, the mishmash human being, the Chandala. And once again, it had no other means of making its antithesis harmless and weak than to make it sick. It was the struggle with the great mass. There may be nothing more contrary to our sensibility than these safety measures of Indian morality. The third edict, for example, Avadana Shastra 1, the edict on unclean vegetables, commands that the only nourishment allowed to the Chandala must be garlic and onions, in consideration of the fact that the Holy Writ forbids that they be brought grain or seed-bearing fruits, or that they be given water or fire. The same edict declares that the water they need may be taken neither from rivers, nor springs, nor ponds, but only from the entries to swamps and from hollows made by animals' hooves. Furthermore, the Chandalas are forbidden to wash their clothes or to wash themselves, for the water which is provided to them as a favor may be used only to quench their thirst. Finally, it is forbidden for the Shudra women to attend Chandala women in birth, and similarly, even for Chandala women themselves to attend each other in birth. The success of such policing of sanitation was not long in coming. Murderous plagues, horrible sexually transmitted diseases, and consequently the law of the knife, prescribing circumcision for the male children and the removal of the inner labia for the females. Manu himself says, "The Chandalas are the fruit of adultery, incest, and crime. This is the necessary consequence of the concept of breeding. For clothing they shall have nothing but rags from corpses, for dishes, broken pots, for ornament, old iron, for worship, nothing but the evil spirits. They shall wander without rest from one place to the next. It is forbidden to them to write from left to right, or to use their right hand in writing. The use of the right hand and the left to write is reserved exclusively for the virtuous, for the people of race." 4. These provisions are instructive enough. In them we have, on the one hand, Aryan humanity, completely pure and primordial. We learn that the concept of pure blood is the very opposite of an innocuous concept. On the other hand, it becomes clear in which people hatred, Chandala hatred against this humanity, became eternal, where it became religion, became genius. From this point of view, the Gospels are a document of utmost importance. The Book of Enoch even more so. Christianity, which springs from a Jewish root and is understandable only as a growth on this soil, represents the counter-movement to every morality of breeding, of race, of privilege. It is the anti-Aryan religion par excellence. Christianity is the revaluation of all Aryan values, the triumph of Chandala values, the gospel preached to the poor, the lowly, the general rebellion of all the oppressed, the miserable, the failures, the unfortunates against race, the immortal Chandala vengeance as a religion of love. 5. The morality of breeding and the morality of taming are perfectly worthy of each other in the means they employ. We may posit as a supreme principle that in order to make morality, one must have the unconditional will to its opposite. This is the great uncanny problem, which I have pursued the farthest, the psychology of those who improve humanity. A small and basically modest fact first gave me access to this problem, the so-called pia fraus, pious fraud, the inheritance of all philosophers and priests who have improved humanity. Neither Manu nor Plato, nor Confucius, nor the Jewish and Christian teachers have ever doubted their right to lie. They haven't doubted that they had very different rights as well. To put it in a formula, one could say all the means by which humanity was to have been made moral up to now were immoral from the bottom up.